So, imagine this. It's getting quite late, and you're sat in the dark office of Don Vito Corleone, patiently waiting for the Don. Soon, you hear the doors slowly open, followed by a series of footsteps. The Don himself and his trusted men enter the room. The sit-down begins. If you could ask him anything you want, what would it be? What do you think would be the advice he would give you? I'm sure you have a whole list of questions, and so would I, but the one that would certainly be on all our lists is, what was the key to his success? What were the principles he believed in, and the rules that allowed him to become the man he ended up becoming? Well, Vito would then give you his 10 rules for success. Some of these might be controversial, however, that will be up to you to decide. All these laws are connected. You can't achieve one without the other, so make sure to watch and listen closely, because if you do, you're 10 steps ahead of your competition in every possible way, and on your way to achieve whatever it is you desire. But if you don't, let's just say you'll not like what happens next. So with that out of the way, let's find out Vito Corleone's 10 rules for success.
And I refused to be a fool, dancing on the string held by all those big shots.
Rule 10. Now, this one might not be what you'd expect. From early age in Vito's life, his only goal was to survive, but as the years went by, his vision slightly changed and actually expanded. He slowly began to witness the potential he had and what he could actually accomplish. Internally, he swore to never bow down to anyone ever again, and so he set a clear goal for himself. He was going to build an empire where he would live by his own laws, where his children would be in a position to achieve the unthinkable, to actually become the ones who pulled the strings.
But I thought that when it was your time, that you would be the one to hold the strings. Senator Corleone, Governor Corleone.
And with a clear end goal in mind, all that was left was working towards it. Look, you need a clear goal, a vision that you want to conquer. It can change and grow over time, but it's essential when starting out. So the very first thing you should be thinking and trying to find out is, what does success mean to you? What does it look like? What is the goal you want to achieve? Detail the milestone you want to conquer. Once you have that, then and only then can you start working towards that goal. And that's really when all the fun begins.
Don Corleone. I need a man who has powerful friends. I need $1 million in cash. I need, Don Corleone, those politicians that you carry in your pocket, like so many nickels and dimes.
Rule 9. This is the secret behind Don Vito's monumental success. It's literally what gave him the advantage over the other Dons. People from all walks of life, from powerful senators to small business owners, all would travel miles for the chance to meet with the Godfather to solve their problems. Why? Well, to put it simply, it's because Vito, like any other successful business, was providing unique services by solving a problem. People came to him because they knew he was the only one that could solve their problem and was indeed reliable. And this strategy worked time and time again, which added to his aura and reputation as being the powerful Godfather that we now know. Similar to the Don, we should learn to provide a unique skill or product that makes you indispensable and at least very hard to replicate. You do this by constantly improving your skills and always being ahead of your competition. And don't worry, we'll get to the details of how exactly to do this in the next few laws.
And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, then become my enemies. And then they will fear you.
Be my friend?
Rule 8. The Godfather was one of the most powerful men in the country. He wielded tremendous power. He was respected. He was feared, but at the same time, he was loved. A very rare combination that makes us wonder how. One of the most important factors was that Vito treated everyone respectfully. It didn't matter if he was talking to a powerful mafia boss, a senator, a banker, or even Nazzarini, the baker. Even when he was disrespected by Buonasera, he still maintained his temper. However, he knew how to leverage his reputation and position, so he could indirectly get what he wanted without uttering a single open threat. And so with this method, Vito was always in a position that allowed him to make friends rather than enemies. Vito was careful not to offend the wrong person, as he could be creative creating an enemy that would be willing to go to extreme lengths to attack him. After all, no one can really predict how far someone is willing to go, no matter how small or pathetic the reason is. You never know what people are capable of doing, and so it's better to create allies than enemies. But it also works when you look at it from the flip side. If someone is grateful and feels respected, you never know how much they truly appreciate the favor and what lengths they're willing to go to repay you.
If there is trouble, I stay here to help you. For your father, for your father.
But it only works if you genuinely do it without the expectation of something in return. So even with all the power and status he wielded, his ego and the way he treated others never changed from the simple man he was all those years ago.
Ma come fai tu a farci picchiare nemmeno?
Apoiamoci come interessa. Ma solo ricordatevi che vi feci un piacere.
Rule 7. Don Vito had mastered the art of negotiation, not by constantly arguing and using threats, similar to what the other Dons were known for. Rather, Vito let his actions do all the talking he needed. Some people think that Vito got what he wanted by using some persuasive techniques or some sort of psychological tricks and manipulation. Although they did play a critical part in sending a message, it's not what gave Vito's words the power they had. In other words, it's not what allowed him to make an offer they can't refuse. It was actually his actions, and here's why. It was because people knew that his words carried weight. If Vito said something, you bet he would do everything possible to ensure it became a reality.
We all know him as a man of his word.
He didn't make promises he couldn't keep, and he never cheated or would go back on his word. Therefore, it was his actions that gave his words the power they had. And again, this was something he held as an important life principle. Once he gave his word, that was it. That in itself was a binding contract.
Trying not to be careless. Women and children can be careless, but not men.
Rule 6. This is perhaps the most important piece of advice Don Vito gave to Michael. Breaking this law has probably been the primary reason that led so many individuals, athletes, companies, all the way to entire empires to completely collapsing. If you analyze history, you'll find a very common trend where empires as large as the Roman Empire to some of the biggest and most successful athletes slowly become arrogant and more careless and sloppy with how they do things, which usually begins by ignoring early signs of a potential risk, then it snowballs out of control until it can no longer be stopped. On the other hand, when preparing to take a huge step towards a goal, they don't sit down and think about how exactly they're actually going to achieve this goal, and don't bother ensuring that the execution of the plan is at a high standard. Again, let's look at how Vito handled the whole Don Fanucci situation. Instead of recklessly attempting to take out Fanucci, he gathered as much information on this Don as possible, watched him from afar for a while, and then formulated a plan. This all took a while and needed quite a bit of effort, but he did it anyway, which is why in the end, it worked. The benefit of this is that it gives you clarity. You know the path you must take and what set of actions you need to execute. So here's what you need to do. Before proceeding, analyze all the possible outcomes and consequences. What is the best option of reaching your goal with the least amount of risk? What will this action actually lead to? Who will be affected? But remember, circumstances change. New information may arise, so don't be afraid to alter your plans with these changes in mind.
Do not ask for respect. You don't offer friendship. You don't even think to call me Godfather.
Rule 5. The way you carry yourself will often determine how you're treated. In the long run, appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you, or a king respects himself and inspires the same sentiment in others. By acting regally and confident of your powers, you make yourself seem destined to wear a crown. Throughout Vito's life, from the time he was working as a simple store clerk to then a small business owner, all the way to running a multi-billion-dollar empire, Vito Corleone carried himself in a way that commanded respect. Now here's how people mess up this law and the difference of invoking genuine respect instead of looking like a clown, so listen closely. The way you carry yourself plays a vital part in how others perceive you. As Robert Greene writes, quote, "It's up to you to set your own price. Ask for less and that is just what you'll get. Ask for more, however, and you'll send a signal that you're worth a king's ransom. Even those who turn you down respect you for your confidence, and that respect will eventually pay off in ways you cannot imagine. But this doesn't mean you can simply want the world and expect to receive it.
I'm smart and I want respect.
Rather, you should be constantly improving your skills and capabilities so that you're genuinely confident in them. Therefore, when you set your price extremely high, work hard enough that you have the full confidence you can actually back it up. The problem is that instead of confidence, people think that by acting arrogant and without any skills, they will somehow be able to garner the respect of others simply by existing. Let's look at why, or rather how, Vito was able to achieve this so perfectly. Don Vito created an aura for himself which gave off the impression that he was someone of nobility, someone of high status, and should be treated as such. But he did it so masterfully that he ended up truly becoming someone who embodied all these things. He managed to balance it just enough that he didn't come across as arrogant, but at the same time it was absolutely clear that he was confident and self-assured, which radiated across to others. He definitely had the skills and capabilities to back his words with action, and a key to this was the fact he was putting in the necessary amount of work needed to back all his claims of power and authority. Look at the Finucci situation early on. At that time, he was no skilled assassin. However, with enough planning and practice, he skillfully managed to absolutely decimate the grip of a much more powerful opponent. Even during the negotiation with the Don, he still held his ground and carried himself as an equal to Don Finucci without bruising his ego. You too must do this, but extremely carefully, as if not balanced correctly, it could prove extremely costly in the world of business or really any other field you're aiming to conquer. It's essential to remember that even when you know you have the skills, and you even know that they know what you're capable of, do not, I repeat, do not think that this gives you the authority or leeway to act arrogant and belittle others. This can be a catastrophic mistake and is something that Don Vito understood perfectly. Never make the mistake of thinking that you elevate yourself by humiliating people.
You know how they're gonna come at you?
So, Marzini will move against you first.
Mike, can I have a minute?
He'll set up a meeting with someone that you absolutely trust.
Marzini wants to arrange a meeting. He says we can straighten any of our problems out.
Guaranteeing your safety.
I can arrange security. On my territory.
And at that meeting, you'll be assassinated.
Rule 4. One of the best advantages you can have, and even avoiding some catastrophic situations, is always being a few steps ahead. Now, there are a few ways you could become someone who's able to be ahead of potential challenges, but here's how Don Vito did it. Like a chess grandmaster, Vito trained himself to always think several moves ahead, meaning before every action he wanted to take, he would simply analyze what would happen, what would be the reaction to the moves he was making, and then consider how he would maneuver in different circumstances. He looked at the chessboard from all angles, and with the help of his inner circle, he executed his plan to perfection, leaving no room for error by being ahead of his opponents. This would become a deadly skill of his, where he utilized it in numerous scenarios. Again, this mentality is one of the most important skills he would pass down to Michael. Vito kept a very tight circle around him, in which he knew he could count on. But more importantly, they all had a set of unique skills that he utilized, and so could delegate various tasks to them to make sure he was ahead of any potential problems. So Vito didn't wait for problems to become so big he couldn't avoid them. Rather, look to address them head on and as soon as possible. We all have a tendency to react to things as they happen, instead of taking a step back and looking at the situation rationally. Therefore, our actions are heavily influenced by our emotions, and so we end up making dreadful mistakes. For me and you, the problems and situations we have to deal with are hopefully never going to be as dangerous as the ones Don Vito or Michael had to deal with. However, the danger is always there, just in a different form. The ending is everything. Plan all the way to it, taking into account all the possible consequences, obstacles, and twists of fortune that might reverse your hard work and give the glory to others. By planning to the end, you'll not be overwhelmed by circumstances, and you will know when to stop, gently guide fortune, and help determine the future by thinking far ahead. Rule 3. Vito, although having nothing remotely close to a formal education, still understood the vitality of constantly learning throughout his life. He utilized his various experiences to extract important lessons he would then use later on. He was even making use of the experience of those around him to articulate new concepts that he was not familiar with. He was humble enough to recognize that although he was very intelligent and street smart, it simply was just not possible to know everything. And so in various matters that he just didn't understand, he would seek the counsel of other individuals that did. More importantly, he had the humility to actually listen and apply this advice from those around him, who were by no means his superiors, yet he still looked to them for counsel and wanted to know their opinion on a range of matters. Even if he had an opposing point of view, he knew he didn't know it all, and so made sure to consult with those more knowledgeable than him, or at least hear out opposing points of view. You have to remember that this is a long-term journey. You will constantly be put in situations and forced into all kinds of new challenges. Therefore, you must constantly be sharpening your skills, learning from those who clearly know more than you, and then start applying it. You also need to actively seek out this knowledge, as throughout your climb, you'll need to continuously upgrade and challenge your pre-held beliefs. But if you fail to do so, to put it simply, be ready to see everything you worked for collapse before your eyes.
I worked my whole life. I don't apologize to take care of my family.
Rule 2. After the Olive Oil War, Don Vito had pretty much taken over not just his neighborhood, but most of New York. But rather than getting complacent and just enjoying the fruits of his labor, he never lost his drive and vision of what meant most to him. He was constantly looking to advance his businesses, whether it was investing in banks, real estate, hotels, and even had his eyes set on a small town that would later become known as Las Vegas. So the lesson is, don't get too comfortable. Along your journey, you'll start experiencing some success and minor victories. The danger is if you dwell on them and become too comfortable and satisfied, losing that initial hunger you had. Vito never lost his focus and was cautious and quick to tackle any potential problems that may arise. And this becomes even more important after you have a firm base, as now others might see you as a threat, or some aspire to replace you in your position. But if you're aware of the potential attacks or identify your weak points, then no one can exploit them. And if they try, well, you would be there to greet them, destroying any aspirations they had of ruining you. The world is constantly evolving, and if you become complacent, you will certainly fall, as complacency results in becoming more and more careless, which in turn means risking the destruction of everything you've built so far. Remember this: never get too comfortable and slow down, because once again, if you do, be prepared to slowly fall off and come crashing down. Rule 1. If you're still here and listening closely, you're getting a lot closer to your goal than you can even imagine. These rules or principles are the keys that so many successful figures have utilized and mastered before reaching their goals. But now, perhaps the most important rule you must be willing to accept and believe in, the final rule that ties all the other rules together. You ready? By the way, you're actually following this law right now. Let me explain. This law is all about patience. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, but consider this. Although Vito does somewhat break his own law by taking the criminal route rather than the legitimate path, which would have perhaps taken longer for him to reach his end goal, yet still would have been worth it, he didn't fully understand the risks and danger he would put his family through by taking this route. Nevertheless, he did follow this principle. From his perspective, he believed in the process. He put in the work for years without complaining, and was extremely patient and continued to believe that he will one day make his dreams a reality. Also, imagine what a man like Vito could have been if he decided to remain in the legitimate world. Believe me, a lot of these CEOs and leaders are just as ruthless as a mob don. The only difference is the way in which they deal with things. But that's an entire discussion we can have some other time. But here's what I need you to keep in mind. If you follow these laws, you'll get to your destination, but it's almost never going to be a smooth ride. It's important to be vigilant and brutally honest with ourselves on the limitations we have. But this doesn't mean we dwell on them. Just identify them and figure out how you can fix them, and find out all the possible solutions available. And yes, that takes time and effort, but it is that simple. Is it difficult? Absolutely. But nothing worthwhile is going to be easy. If you want to reach your full potential, reaching the highest levels of success, you have to be willing to put in the time and effort. We've heard this so many times, but it really is a fact. After analyzing Don Vito Corleone, these were the 10 major laws that we found he followed judiciously, which allowed him to be as successful as he was. But there are still a lot more. Vito went from an orphan with nothing to his name to one of the most powerful men in the country, controlling an empire worth billions, being both feared and respected by his peers. Once again, yes, although Vito is a fictional character, the principles and keys for success are anything but fictional. You will start understanding this firsthand once you begin to utilize them, and you'll find similarities in the lives of the most successful individuals in human history. There has never been a point in time in history where you can achieve whatever it is you want. All the tools and knowledge you'll need are all out there, so it's on you to utilize them. Essentially, all the information you need is out there. The fact you're able to watch this video puts you in a better position than those who are not. But this does not by any way mean that it's going to be a smooth ride, because not everyone has the discipline to stick by these laws and actually do the work. And so if Don Vito Corleone himself wants to have a sit-down with you, these would be the 10 rules of success he would give you. Come back to this video whenever you need to. You'll probably find something new to utilize. Good luck. Vito learned these important principles through a series of life-changing events, and one of the biggest turning points finally will be revealed in our next video. We've got a very special video to end the year. It's literally this year's most requested video, and so we had to give you something truly special. Thank you for being part of the Culture Mafia. See you next time.